Everybody, I'm going to call to order the May 18th meeting of the Carroll County Planning and Zoning Commission. Can we please establish a quorum?
We can't hear you, Laura. Sorry. Ms. Cheatwood?
Here.
Mr. Canali? Mr. Wathers?
Here.
Ms. Kirkner?
Here.
Mr. Lester?
Here.
Mr. Gosnell?
Here.
Commissioner Wance? Secretary Eisenberg? Here. Ms. Chair, please let the record reflect that 5 members are present and we do have a quorum. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Now let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Move on to the agenda. We had a revised agenda. Any changes since the revision?
No changes since the revision. That was for the addition of the final site plan of Union Bridge Solar.
I move approval. This is Jeff. I move approval of the revised agenda. Sometimes it's hard to get a second on controversial issues, so.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We'll move on to the review and approval of our meeting minutes from April 20th and May 5th. Any edits to those meetings, those minutes?
Jeff, I move approval of the April 20th and May 5th minutes.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Moving on to our commission member reports. Since our last meeting, I approved M200075 Molina Meadows, Section 2. It was a 1-lot subdivision in the southern area of the county. And that's all at this time. I'll take it, Commissioner Wance, if you're on. It doesn't appear so.
Cynthia, can I just interrupt for a second? Control room, can you please let Mr. Canali in? He's waiting to be let in. Thank you. I don't know, he just sent an email saying it says the screen says waiting for Chris Swam.
Maybe he's hitting an old link window or something.
No, the same link you all have, but we'll resend again. All right, thank you. Okay, will do.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on, since it appears Commissioner stepped away for a minute, to other commission members.
Well, other former commission members, I will just say a few words really quickly. As you all know, I was running for Westminster City Council these past 6 weeks, and the campaign became very time consuming. If any of you were paying attention in the paper, it was not your typical nonpartisan election. So I was more than a little overwhelmed, you know, with campaigning and kind of keeping our side positively focused and on message these past 6 weeks. And that's why I was not able to make our last 2 meetings, which I greatly apologize for. But everything ended up going even better than I could have imagined under the circumstances. We had over a 60% jump in voter turnout in Westminster last Tuesday. And the people I was running with, including myself, won in very resounding fashion. So anyway, with that election victory, I was actually sworn in last night as Westminster's newest councilman, which means effective immediately, I can no longer serve on this county's Planning and Zoning Commission, as such dual service would be theoretically impossible according to our county attorney. But also, frankly, even if it were possible, it just would not be realistic because of time constraints. But I did want to take this opportunity to officially say goodbye to all of you. I have been on this commission since 2013, and I've learned so much from serving the community in this way. And I have to especially acknowledge Cynthia, Jeff, and Jean, who have been on this commission since even before I was. And I've learned so much from each one of you, as well as some of our past long-serving members like Alec, Yo, and Richard Soyson. And the staff has always been so great to work with as well. And at this point, I consider many of you not just colleagues, but personal friends. And I do want to just say this as well. What I've always loved about this group, and hope will continue well past my service on this group, is the fact that we could always disagree with one another, have really good debates about the issues or policies that we were considering, but we always did so with a lot of mutual respect and affection for one another. And luckily, it seems that I'm headed to a city council in Westminster with a very similar disposition. And as Commissioner Wance can attest, assuming he's still there, that is not always the case when you're serving in these kind of groups, whether it's the county commissioner level or the city council level or planning and zoning level. When you find yourself serving with a great collection of people who really work well together, but can still really debate the issues in a respectful and kind way, you consider yourself incredibly lucky. So I just want to personally thank each one of you. I will greatly miss serving with you guys. So that's all I wanted to say. So thank you very, very much for allowing me the opportunity to at least say goodbye to all of you, and I will greatly miss you.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah, like I said, it'll be weird without you on that too. So, yeah. Okay, thank you, and congratulations again.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
I can hear you, but barely, Commissioner.
Okay. I just want to take a brief second here to personally thank Dan as well on behalf of all of the county commissioners and all the electeds in the county. As you all well know, it's not easy finding folks that want to serve on boards and commissions. And when you find someone that really puts their heart and soul into it, that's extremely knowledgeable. We truly do appreciate it. And that's been Dan Huff. So Dan, Godspeed to you. And on behalf of all of us, I wish you the best in your new role. And thank you so much for all that you've done for Carroll County.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, we're going to miss you, Dan. Don't want it to seem like a eulogy, but we are going to miss you. And I'm glad you're going to be nearby, taking good care of everybody in Westminster. And you know, the climate, the conditions that you talked about that make this commission special are in no small part due to you. And the way you conduct yourself and the way you look hard at issues, but treat your colleagues with respect and affection, and we very much appreciate that. So you've been very, very important part of this commission. So well done, and it's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yes.
Janice, you muted yourself again.
I got it. Dan, you've been exceptional, a great mentor. So while I'm still going to get to see you plenty, I'm sure, I'm going to miss you in this scenario. So best of luck.
Thanks, Janice.
Dan, Gene Kennelly here. I do want to ditto everything that everybody said and add one little thing from my perspective. No matter how busy or drawn away in other directions, when I try to reach out to you for advice or just to have a friendly discussion, the thing that amazed me is you were always available. Maybe not that minute, but you always got back to me very quickly. And that is a trait that I think should be mentioned, and you'll do well by you. Good luck in the city council.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
All right, and before you sign off, congratulations. Westminster's getting an amazing asset in you, and you're going to be greatly, greatly missed on this planning commission. And I look forward to all the wonderful things you're going to do for the city of Westminster with the new team there. So best of luck.
Thank you, Linda. I'm going to let you all go now. Good luck. And I'm going to miss you all greatly. And I'm sure we'll see each other around, though. Okay? Take care.
Okay, so we'll move on here to administrative report. Secretary Eisenberg.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and I'm glad that you're here today, Ms. Chipwood, so that way we did not have to do an election for a chair. But we will discuss at our next meeting electing a vice chair to serve out the rest of Dan's term, or the rest of the term through November. And that's when we typically hold our elections for chair and vice chair. So we'll take care of that at our next meeting. We do have a June 2nd meeting scheduled, and we have several agenda items for that, as well as a June 30th, which will be dedicated to public outreach for the residential text that is being prepared to be put on our website so people can enter comment and submit to be a speaker at that meeting. And then we will have a follow-up meeting on July 7th to wrap up, hopefully, the residential text and forward to the Board of County Commissioners. So I just wanted to go over those with you today. My understanding is there are no extensions from development review. And so with that, I'm going to have Hannah Weber just update you on a BZA case that she just recently reviewed. Hannah.
Good morning, everybody. There is one BZA case for the May 26th hearing. This is case 6322, Regina Robert Knipp. This is located at 7578 John Pickett Road in the Woodbine Rural Village. The request is for a conditional use for a commercial kennel, as well as distance and lot size variances. This is a 1.4 acre property. This is in Commissioner District 4, zoned agriculture, and we found this to be inconsistent with the master plan due to the mixed land use designation with the request, the possibility of adverse effects due to the large variances being requested, as well as the proximity to neighboring residents, and then inconsistency with the vision and goals with the village residential future land use designation. Is there any questions? Okay, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
All right, thank you, Hannah. And that's all I have for my administrative report for today. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 8 on our agenda, which is the Board of Education Facilities Master Plan. Bill Kane.
Good morning, everyone. I'm here today to introduce the 10-year educational facility master plan. As some of you know, I'm not sure if they're new members, but for new members, every year the school system has to do a 10-year facility master plan. It gets brought to the County Planning and Zoning Commission. The Planning and Zoning Commission has to certify that it is consistent with the county's master plan. And then ultimately, it will go to the Maryland Department of Planning for their review, and then any capital projects that we request from the state, they check to make sure those capital projects are in the educational facility master plan. This document was presented to the Board of Ed last week. It will go back to the Board of Education for their approval at the June meeting. And then it's due to Maryland Department of Planning July 1 of every year. I think this year is July 2nd, but the plan is updated annually. This year's plan really is basically the same as last year's plan. There's not really any major changes as far as projects identified. Just to give you a little bit of what's in it, there's 3 major renovation modernization projects: the Career and Tech Center, East Middle Replacement School, and then in the future, a feasibility study looking at modernizing William Winchester Elementary. The Career and Tech Center, as you've probably seen if you've driven by the school, is actually under construction. East Middle, we're hopeful that we can start construction this summer. We're waiting to hear from the state whether the state's going to provide funding through the Build to Learn Act that was passed this year. And then the feasibility study for William Winchester is pretty far in the, it's 4 or 5 years in the future. So that's just kind of on the radar. The other projects in the plan, we have some roof replacement projects, some heating, air conditioning projects. Those are just kind of system replacements. The only change from last year really is the ones that didn't get funded got pushed back a year. So we'll keep asking for those. As far as capacity projects, there's not any capacity projects identified, but one thing that I would share with you all is that typically the capacity projects, whether we need to do anything capacity related, we obviously use the enrollment projections. This past year was kind of a totally unforeseen circumstance with the pandemic. Just so you know, Carroll County Public Schools, from March of last year through September 30th, we didn't lose, but about 800 students withdrew from the public school system. About half went to homeschooling and about half went to private schools. So when I was developing the projections for this year, obviously that's an unusual circumstance to use as a basis to project going forward. So through discussions with the Board of Ed in February, I believe the board meeting, we talked about it. There were really a few choices that we had to develop the projections. One was assume that none of those students are coming back, and that here going forward, we're going to be 800 students down, and then projecting forward, those 800 students will not return to the public school system. On the other end, we could assume that they're all going to come back. The only reason they left was the pandemic. I think that's still possible, but I'm not sure that that's likely. Where we landed and the projections, I guess the assumption that the projections were based on was about half of them will come back. Obviously, it could be anywhere in that range, but the projections that are included in the document were developed based on the assumption that about half of the students that withdrew will return this fall to public schools, with the assumption that this fall public schools will be returning to normal, which I think, based on the state board and the governor's announcement, I think that's a pretty safe assumption at this point, is that in the fall we'll be back to 5 days a week and students will be in person. But that uniqueness to these projections presented a problem as far as you know, last year we had, prior to the pandemic, we had a Freedom Area Redistricting Committee. That committee was put kind of frozen when the pandemic hit. We have been kind of on hold, and where the Board of Ed and where the superintendent is right now is we want to wait until the September 30th actual enrollments actually are on the books to see how many students returned and what that means for the projections going forward, because it's very hard to make recommendations and develop options. Right now, the most accurate set of projections I would say we have, at least based on historical enrollments, are the projections from 2 years ago. So, this current set of projections, while it's our best guess and what we, our best hope at nailing down what the influence of this pandemic will be, I don't know that anyone's really comfortable making major long-term decisions with this set of projections, just because of the once in a lifetime kind of impact to it. So at this point, the recommendation is to wait until we see how many students return in the fall, and then we can develop a set of projections based on that data. So from a capacity standpoint, that the recommendation at this point is to wait until we see what the actual enrollments are, and then the Board of Ed will reevaluate, and if the decision is to reconvene at that point, they would reconvene the committee. So that's kind of the overview of what's in the plan as far as projects and what the school capacity recommendations would be. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Bill, this is Jeff Weathers. I have a quick question. I haven't read the whole report yet, but in skimming through it, I know part of what you all look at has to do with demographics and people moving in, people moving out, age, that sort of thing. Have you all captured any of the information related to people perhaps moving in, or the demand for housing moving in as a result of COVID? Because certainly anecdotally, we're seeing folks moving around, and that might seem to have an impact on that, but I don't know if you can capture that data that quickly.
So yeah, the data that I collect and use in the plan as far as migration trends comes from the Maryland Department of Planning, and it's not real time. I would say that the trend and the information in there is actually through July 1 of last summer. So it's really almost a year-old data, but the trend had been, we were seeing more folks moving into the county over the last few years, and our enrollment actually prior to the pandemic, the previous 3 years, we had seen growing enrollments because of that, the housing market and the in-migration. I really can't say, because I don't have the information yet from Department of Planning, what this past year with the pandemic has been. I do also look at real estate information, and the information I looked through December of last year. So the pandemic influence is in there, and I will say that the housing market in Carroll County was very very hot. The days on the market was smaller than in previous years. The number of housing units sold. So I would say that based on the information I saw, I think the housing market in Carroll County is still very strong. There's still a lot of folks that want to move to the county for many different reasons. And I think the assumption, that's part of the reason we built these projections based on the assumption that half of those students that withdrew are going to come back, as opposed to none of the students. And then the other assumption, didn't talk about, the other assumption is these projections are based on a 4-year history of cohort succession ratios or survival ratios. We kind of threw the last years out, because if we had incorporated those, obviously we had less students show up in the fall than the previous fall. So it would have lowered that history. It would have dampened the projections. But because we still believe that the housing market is pretty strong, we threw last year's out, and we used those succession ratios of the previous 4 years, which had seen some growth. So these projections are based on an assumption that growth that we had been seeing will continue and pick back up once this pandemic's over. So yeah, I mean, I use the most available information I have, but I wouldn't say it's like, we don't have anything locally that can give me that real-time snapshot, monthly. So.
Bill, this
Thank
is
you.
Peter. I'm curious. How does the drop in enrollment this year impact funding from the state going forward next year? Do you have a sense of where the state is on that?
So the state funds the school system based on enrollment. It's a per pupil number. I'm talking operating budget. Capital budget's a different story, but the operating budget obviously is funded per pupil, and it was obviously we dropped about 3%, and I would say statewide it was about 3% for most folks. The General Assembly actually this year, because of that, held folks harmless. So the drop in enrollment, they kind of are going to say, well, that's a one-time blip. We're not going to count that against you. So the General Assembly did build in something into the legislation this year that they're going to hold folks harmless and fund. I'd have to talk to our chief financial officer about specifically how the formula. It's very complicated, but basically they're going to hold everyone harmless for this pandemic. When it picks back up next year, the Kerwin legislation that was passed obviously is going to rewrite the formula. So I think that will be built in. They're still working on the formula as far as I know, but that going forward, I think they're going to build that in. But the intention of the General Assembly is not to, just because of this, if you lost 400 students, they're not going to penalize you. So that's kind of where we are as far as the operating budget.
Any other questions for Bill at this time? I mean, you'll be back, right? Correct?
Yeah, I believe I'm on the June 2nd meeting. Typically, we get a letter, and then that letter becomes a part of the plan that goes to the Department of Planning, the State Department of Planning.
Correct. So as always, we are drafting a letter for your review, and I will have that prepared for the June 2nd meeting. Yes, Bill, you will be on that agenda. So you can come back and we can finalize the recommendations if there are any or issues that we may see in the education facilities master plan that you want to address.
Bill, Gene Canella here. Just a quick question on the Votex Center. Is that on schedule, and when would that be completed?
It's on schedule. Right now, the addition is going up. The addition was a 2-year, in the front, the new face of the building is supposed to be done not this summer, but next summer for the following fall. And then we'll move folks from the, programs from the old part to the new part. And then renovations are going to happen in the old part. The total project is actually a 4-year project. So it actually won't, the overall project won't be completed for 3 more summers, but the big addition and new face of the building, that's going to be where the new front entrance is, that's set to be done next summer for that fall. And I think that'll be the rest of the work will be renovations, but what the community sees, I think, and the new layout will be next summer. So it's exciting. I know the folks there are seeing the steel go up. I think helps visualize, and make it real for the staff and the students. So I think everyone's getting excited.
So thank you, Bill. It appears no more questions at this time. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll
See you in a couple of weeks.
See you in a few weeks.
Okay, I'll move on to our item number 9, a special report by Laura Matthias.
Good morning, everybody. I anticipate everybody can hear me, right? All right, excellent. And if the control room could please give me the screen sharing ability, that would be great. Thank you. All right. Good morning, everyone. I am Laura Matthias with the Bureau of Development Review, and we have quite a lineup this morning. We have 4 projects on the agenda, and I am fortunate enough to go first and present you with our one and only special report for today. The plan is called Walters Acres. This is a minor subdivision, and so typically, of course, you would not see it as a minor subdivision. It would go through our process, be approved by agencies, and then head to the chair of the Planning Commission for approval. But in this case, there are a couple of requests coming to you. One is they are looking to do a cluster of the 3 lots they are proposing. So in accordance with the code, we bring these before you and you make that determination. So the other request before you today is for a modification to the maximum number of users on a use in common driveway. And we are in the conservation zoning district, and the code does permit 7 users. And you'll see the request that came from Mr. Lumberman is in your packet, and it's a request to go from 7 users to 10 users on this use in common driveway. So I just want to give John Lumberman, I saw him on here, give him a moment to introduce himself, and anybody else that's with you today, John.
Good morning. This is John Lumberman with RTF Associates Land Surveyors and Planners. The personal representative of the estate of Walter Barnes, who is the developer, was not able to make it this morning. He may have somebody on the line, I'm not sure. However, he did ask me to present the project for him, so that's what I plan on doing this morning. And I'm going to go right into it if that's okay.
Do you want me to go through the report first, John, and then give you the opportunity to, it might make sense to give the full picture, and then sure. as I then I'll hand it over to John to give his, of course, he's making the case for the modification as well as the cluster. So I'll give some background information, and then I'll turn it over to you. Is that all right?
Sounds good. Thanks, Laura.
Okay, awesome. All right, very good. So location-wise, we are down here's Oklahoma Road, Bennett, Mineral Hill. If you come down Mineral Hill, you will reach Arthur Avenue. It's a small road tucked in here. You will see these are all properties are zoned R20,000, and then we head into conservation because we're right at the Liberty Reservoir here. Okay, so we're just north of 26 and we're south of Oklahoma Road in that little enclave area there by the reservoir. So this property, the subject property, is it's just over 30 acres. The entirety of it is zoned conservation. All right. There we go. So now we're zoomed in. You'll see it's a pretty heavily wooded site. There is a communications tower here. Back in 2003, the Planning Commission did see a site plan for a cell tower here on the property that was approved through the Planning Commission, and it exists there today. Okay, so you'll notice the uniqueness. They actually do have frontage at Arthur Avenue here, which is a county-owned road. Okay, you'll notice the uniqueness of this property. It's kind of what I call the barbell shape remainder. They had taken 2 off conveyances here and here, and then done some reconfiguration of parcels here, here, here. So it's created this kind of unique shape here. It's totally undeveloped apart from the communications tower. Okay. So we have Arthur Avenue, and then we have a paved private drive, which extends to approximately here. And it's 12 foot wide. And I'm just calling it extension from Arthur Avenue. It does not have a name right now. It's an extension from Arthur Avenue, okay? So regarding the number of users, which is the first request, so I'm gonna go through this, and I have to tell you, like, I've got like a whole legend and cheat sheet for this project because I had to really figure out which parcels are where and what's doing who. And yet in the report, I still got one of the parcel numbers wrong, and I will correct that as we go. So we have Arthur Avenue. We come down here. We do have 4 realized access to 4 properties right now. And I say realized because they're built, they have a house on them, they have an address, and they have a driveway that goes out to this extension and out to Arthur Avenue. Okay. So we have 2445 Arthur Avenue, 2421 Arthur Avenue, 2420 Arthur Avenue, and 2411 Morris Lane. So this property right here is Morris Lane. Okay. We do have another property right here. I didn't write all the addresses down. This property accesses that extension, and the off conveyance was taken around the existing house on the property right here, and they utilize Arthur Avenue. Okay. So those are the 4 built properties that utilize that driveway. In addition, the Coons property is built. It is here. They do use Barnes Lane. Barnes Lane is a lane that comes all the way back to this property at the far reaches. I should have measured how long this is, but it's it's a lane that comes all the way out here and all the way back out to the main road. Okay, so this property uses that, but they do have a right of way that comes out to use Arthur Avenue. So if they ever so chose, they could make use of that. But right now they use Barnes Lane exclusively. Okay. So then there are 2 unbuilt parcels that also have a right to utilize that Arthur Avenue. One, which is right here. It actually has frontage here, right? And the second one is right here. It's a second parcel owned by this property owner, but it is an independent parcel. They could sell it tomorrow. They could build it tomorrow with a residence, and that would also be able to utilize Arthur Avenue. Okay. So 4 built, 1 that is built but utilizes Barnes, and the 2 unbuilt parcels. Whew. Okay. Everybody with me? So the number of existing users plus existing properties with rights of way to that extension is 7. Now, of course, there is the existing subject property, and there is there's another off conveyance back here. These are proposed through this subdivision to exclusively utilize Barnes Lane. Okay, there are existing properties that have a right to utilize Barnes Lane. So they, in the process of this subdivision, they will be restricted to utilizing Barnes Lane. They're not included on the potential number of users for the extension of Arthur Avenue. Okay. So as we talked about, the properties along Arthur Avenue are zoned R20. They're built with single family residences. They do have public water, the private septic systems in this area. And the subject property is proposed to use private well and septic. Okay. Properties adjoining the subject property are conservation, and they do use private well and septic systems. The property itself, of course, slopes downhill towards the reservoir. There are some wetlands located near the southern and the eastern property lines. And of course, as I mentioned, extensive forests throughout the property. So that gives a summary of what exists. Okay. Any questions right now? Because then I'm going to move into the plan and what's proposed. But I want to make sure everybody has the full picture. Okay. Good. All right, so the developer is proposing to create 3 residential lots. They will all have access to Arthur Avenue, which is a county road, via that extension, which will be named through this subdivision process. The proposed name is Osprey Nest Drive. Okay. And a use in common driveway, of course, I included the definition. It's a private driveway serving 2 or more properties. Okay. So the use in common standards shall be met. That would include a pullover and a turnaround. So the first portion of this is the modification to the number of users, and that determination in accordance with the code lies with the Planning Commission. Okay, so that is also included in your report. The modification where the Planning Commission finds that because of unusual circumstances of shape and topography or other physical features or conditions of the proposed subdivision, or because of the nature of adjacent developments, that extraordinary hardship may result from strict compliance with the UIC design requirements, there may be granted a modification when requested by the subdivider or developer. Okay. Prior to considering that request, the Planning Commission shall refer the matter for technical agency review. So this is, we've done this before. You most recently saw the request for modification, probably most recently with the Sun Valley subdivision that came through. So what happens on our end is that agencies are requested to review the letter that is submitted by the engineer, which John Lemmerman submitted a letter on behalf of the developer seeking relief. That was included in your packet. And then that was distributed to the Bureau Chief of Resource Management, the Bureau Chief of Roads, our Office of Public Safety, our Department of Planning, and Engineering Review for their comments. Now, you don't have those comments in your packet. They were not complete. All of them were not received at the time of the writing of the report. So I did email them this morning to Laura Bavetta, so you should be getting them, but I'm going to go ahead and read through those comments so you know what the agency comments were. Okay. So the Department of Planning says, in summary, the modification request will not have the effect of nullifying the intent or purpose of the 2018 Freedom Community Comprehensive Plan. Okay. So they had no issue. The Bureau of Resource Management has no comments. The Bureau Chief of Roads says there are no issues with the modification. Office of Public Safety has no objection to the modification. And Engineering Review weighed this against the alternative, which is what we saw in Sun Valley. They did not pursue the use in common, they did a county road instead. And after reviewing all of the criteria for this instance, Engineering Review commented that a use in common driveway is preferred actually to a county road in this location. Okay. So those were the comments back from the review agencies. So with your determination on that part one request for the modification, and I'm going to go through this entire report, start to finish. I'm going to talk about this modification as well as the clustering and show you what they're proposing there. And then, as I said, I'll let John speak to the requests. Okay, so with that determination, if you grant the modification, so the request is to grant the modification for the maximum number of users permitted on Osprey Nest Drive. If you go ahead and do that, then the conventional plan can be considered for the purposes of determining the lot yield, okay? Which in this case, they're proposing 3 lots. If the modification is not granted, the conventional plan would necessitate a redesign. That might mean a county road to support the number of users. That might mean maybe they get 1 lot directly off of Arthur Avenue. I don't know what a redesign would entail, but they would have to go back to the drawing board. And you may or may not see that again if they decide to pursue a cluster plan. You would see it again. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. Here's some pictures of the site. So this is that extension road from Arthur Avenue. This is the terminus of Arthur Avenue right now. You'll see county road signs, end of maintenance, and then this is the private extension that is 12-foot wide. Okay. You'll see in this photo there are a couple other driveways that come off of the terminus here of Arthur Avenue. And this is standing on that extension and looking back towards the terminus of Arthur Avenue. If I move to the next slide, you'll see this is a view from the end of Arthur Avenue looking out. It's out back towards the main road. Okay. And I went down. I'll show you where we are here. So this is Barnes Lane. This is that private drive which will be utilized for the subject property as well as the existing off conveyance. And the Coons property uses that right now. Okay. This is what Barnes Lane looks like at the main road. It is a lane. And here's an aerial shot, which I thought was from Google Earth. You'll see the reservoir, an eastern branch of the reservoir. This is Arthur Avenue right here. Okay, so we are oriented a little different here. And Barnes Lane is here, where we come back. Barnes Lane all the way back to that one property. And then Arthur Avenue and the extension, which serves those few lots right now. Okay. All right, so moving forward to the plan. You have both the conventional plan and the cluster plan in your packets. This is the conventional plan. Okay, so you'll see Arthur Avenue, the extension of Arthur Avenue, 2 lots in the far northwestern portion of the property. The 3rd lot shown down in the southern portion of the property. They are looking to put a parcel around the cell tower. That is A-okay. We can go ahead and do that. That will not be counted in the number of users. That will not be in the declaration of maintenance obligations for this use in common drives. Okay. And you'll see the house proposed on the subject property with the access drive to Barnes Lane. So the minimum lot size in conservation is 3 acres. We have 3 lots proposed. The first one is 3.8 acres, 4.48 acres, and 5.04 acres. So they would all meet the bulk requirement. Okay. So clustering is permitted in conservation zoning districts. That section of the code is included in your packet as well. And of course, with that, we take the difference. We've had a lot of conversation about this recently, so you're very familiar. We take the difference in lot size between the 3 acre minimum lot size and what they're looking to do on the cluster plan in terms of lot size, and we put that into open space. So this is the cluster plan. Yes.
Can you go back to the conventional again? And
yes.
So I understand what's going on. Can you show me on this plan the 10 potential users?
Yes. I think so. It's like a pop quiz, but yes.
Right.
Okay. Okay. So existing built properties here, 1, here, 2, 3, 4. Okay. The Coons right of way, right? 5. The second parcel here of Martin, 6. What did I miss? Did I get this one? Oh, this one here, unbuilt, 7. And then 8, 9, 10. So the 3 new lots are 8, 9, and 10.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay, so moving forward to the cluster plan. So the plan proposes to cluster the lots near the terminus of Arthur Avenue. They will be accessed from Osprey Nest Drive. 1, 2, 3 driveways. Okay. The lot sizes are 2.25 acres, 2.13, and 2.04. The open space required is 2.57 acres. And that's again the difference between the 3-acre lot sizes and then the lot sizes proposed, right? The plan does propose in excess of what is required. They're proposing 5.1 acres, and they would all be on the resulting lands. So you'll see on the far eastern portion of the resulting lands here, an open space parcel. In the southern end, open space parcel, and then on the far western end, an open space parcel. So these will be put into easement, conservation easements, and granted to the county. Both plans propose all properties being served by well and septic. The conventional plan does depict septic areas, but I'm not seeing a key for a percolation test on there. John, confirm. I do not believe that we tested on the conventional lots. And the Planning Commission may require percolation tests to determine the number of lots that can be clustered if you so chose. All right, and we talked about the parcel at the communication tower is presented as well on this plan. Again, it's not for residential use. It's not included in the number of users or the declaration of maintenance obligations that will be required for Osprey Nest Drive. Okay. So again, as a minor subdivision, we move through the review agency process, addressing all comments. This project will not proceed to a technical review committee meeting as a minor subdivision. It is not subject to concurrency management as a minor subdivision, and the chair of the Planning Commission is authorized for all minor subdivisions to approve the final plan. So solely the reasons we are here today are these two requests as a special report. So the modification to the number of users on a use in common drive from 7 to 10, and the pursuit of a cluster plan versus the conventional plan. So hopefully that gives you a good background. And now John can address the modification request as well as the pursuit of the cluster plan and their logic in regards to that, why that is desirable. And John, if you want me to switch the slides, just let me know, okay?
Thank you, Laura. You can leave that one up for now.
I have one more question before you go, John. For the resulting lands, Laura, you say it's buildable. Does that mean it can be further subdivided, the resulting lands?
Oh, thank you for saying that. I think it's in the report and I forgot to highlight it. So the resulting lands, as we go through this subdivision, they will not have the frontage anymore at the public road that is required in order to subdivide. So this will be they will not be entitled to any further lots under that criteria. Thank you.
Good morning, John Limmerman with RTF Associates again. I guess as far as the cluster is concerned, the property is obviously a unique configuration, and it adjoins Liberty Reservoir, which is a public water supply. So therefore, it must be developed responsibly. Has road frontage on County Road, Arthur Avenue, and right away, as Laura explained, access on Barnes Lane, which is actually many years ago, former Liberty Road. So because the regulations have been added to the code in the past in Carroll County, we must ask Planning Commission for any modifications to the codes so that common sense can prevail in a lot of situations. So once we did the environmental site delineation and the forest conservation, or I'm sorry, the forest stand delineation on the property, we had a clear picture of the wetlands, streams, stream buffers, and we actually located and identified 53 specimen trees on this property, which are required to be protected by MDE. You actually need a variance to remove these, whether they're in poor condition or anything. So it makes total sense in this situation to cluster the 3 lots in the area that we're proposing. There's only a few specimen trees in the area that around the perimeter of this little enclave that's close to the public roads, so there's less infrastructure and roads and disturbances needed. I mean, this is a prime example of why Carroll County has clustering in there as an option. It just makes total sense to put all these lots clustered close to the road in an environmentally responsible manner. And ultimately, it's less disturbance and clearing of the trees. Moving on to the number of users on the driveways.
Before you go on, John, can I just ask a question?
Absolutely.
Okay, on the clustering, so in the conventional plan, you have a lot down to the southern portion that is removed in the clustering. So what happens with that parcel of land? Because the actual deeded open space is only a small portion over to, what is that, the west? So what's going to become of the land basically surrounding the cell tower?
We're clustering the lots, and basically there's whatever is left over is going to be part of what's called the resulting land lot. So it's all, and the purpose of the clustered regulations is to cluster the lot yield and then have one large parcel with the majority of the environmental easements associated with it, and that is non-subdividable. So we could have proposed a road, cul-de-sac road, asked for additional lots. However, the developers, they live here in the area. Matter of fact, the entire estate, as far as I understand, or at least most of them, live at the end of Arthur Avenue in these houses that Laura mentioned, and are users of this driveway. So they're responsible. They're in their eyes, they're developing this as responsible as they possibly can. Also. Is there any other questions on clustering before I move on to the driveways?
So I think you answered that question absolutely. And just to reiterate, so the resulting land comes all the way down, right? And all the way over here, and the open space parcel, and back and up. And I'm doing an outline because it's still quite an interesting shape to it. And it does include all of that land. So it is part of the resulting lands, just to clarify.
Right. And no subdivision whatsoever.
No further subdivision if this plan is approved, correct?
Correct.
So as far as the number of driveway users, fortunately the staff, which is the first I've heard of it, they were positive and prefer to use a common driveway here rather than a county road. But as far as lot 1 that's being proposed, technically could come off the right of way of Arthur Avenue. We're trying to avoid disrupting or removing a massive 75-inch scarlet oak, which is right there at the end of Arthur Avenue. If you've done a site visit, you probably noticed it because it's fairly rare due to its size. So it's very large. And in addition, there's a 36-inch red oak to the adjacent to that. So we're trying to avoid removing those, and we don't even know if we'll even get a variance to remove it since it's so large. So coming off the driveway just makes a little more practical sense. It's coming off within the first 50 feet of the entrance probably, so it's a very limited extra user of this driveway. As Laura mentioned, 2541 Barnes Lane, which is to the extreme south of the property, does not use this driveway. However, there is language in their deed that they potentially can. Don't know, they don't now, they may never, but it has the potential. And then again, as Laura mentioned, the 2411 Morris Lane property had purchased additional land in the 60s and 70s, and development review says they could potentially develop that land, which would potentially use our use and common driveway, which is being named because of the number of users, which will be, it's one of the requirements for emergency services. So the proposed use and common driveway that we're speaking of, and I'm asking for a variance, is named Osprey Nest Drive. And it will be named once the subdivision is approved. So the three of them are potential users, an abundance of caution, and I guess with the intent to avoid any future issues, is why we're here asking for a variance from the 7 to 10 users. Then it may not be ever 10 users, but the potential is there, and we just want to make sure there's no future issues for anyone. And well, this is all kind of related, but there is a third item on this project. Laura and I have discussed. I'm not trying to bring any surprises to anybody, but I don't know where the staff recommendations are. But on March 16th and 20 of this year, so it's a little over 2 months ago, we asked for a waiver from Department of Public Works Design Manual, specifically section 2.7.18, which requires a cul-de-sac. And I'm bringing this up because this is all related to this, and ultimately, I would like to have, and developers like to have, planning commission's input on this, or what weight on it. And while we're here, versus having to come back in another month or two and dragging things out, I'd like to bring it up if that's okay. So the requirement in the design manual for Department of Public Works has from the 80s, that had a thing in where at the end of a terminus road, which is, we're talking about Arthur Avenue, they like to require a cul-de-sac or permanent terminus at the end. We have asked for a waiver on that also, and primarily because of all the reasons I mentioned before why we're clustering. It's a environmentally sensitive area. There's a fairly rare 75-inch scarlet oak right at the end of the road that we'd like to preserve, in addition to the 36-inch red oak specimen tree adjacent to it. And back in the 80s, when they put that in the manual, it really wasn't that as big of a deal to draw a cul-de-sac, put the typical section on their profile, and they build it. Fast forward to today with the current stormwater management regulations, aside from increasing the impervious area, which they try to not allow you to do, to address stormwater management, you're basically not only disturbing what you have to build for the cul-de-sac, but typically in my experience, at least twice that disturbance of the cul-de-sac is going to get disturbed, because you have to treat the runoff with the current stormwater management requirements. So it's a lot bigger deal, a lot more engineering and a lot more cost and a lot more disturbance to build this cul-de-sac than it was back in the 80s. And due to the environmental regulations, ironically enough. But in addition, there's never been any issues as far as emergency vehicle turning around or delivery turnarounds at the end of the road, to our knowledge, or my developer's knowledge, who's lived here all their life practically. Been utilized for decades, and the existing conditions do allow for vehicles and large vehicles to turn around. There's a wide driveway, there's several driveways at the end, there's a wide entrances, and even if it's hard to see with the scale drawing, but when the vehicle pulled into our Osprey Drive and backed into the other driveway, they're technically still in the county right away for Arthur Avenue. They're not on a private lot when they back up into that. So I don't see any issues with leaving the way things are. I really think it's a good idea and common sense in this scenario. It's not hurting anything. It's not, I think it would be more detrimental to construct a cul-de-sac and with the additional disturbance. And again, I don't know if we'll even be able to get a variance. It's possible we can from MDE or the county as far as removing specimen trees, but we'd like to avoid it because it is a staple of the neighborhood at the end of the road. Again, the developer could have asked for additional lots, and construct a cul-de-sac road, but their intent is to develop this in a controlled and I guess as least intrusive to the neighborhood as possible, which is why we're asking for processing a minor subdivision. Laura, I know we had discussed that at the last meeting, and it was being processed. I don't know if you have any feedback from agencies or not, but that's where we're at. So honestly, developers would like to add the third request to the planning commission if we can while we're here.
So John, I don't have anything additional for you. That is still in review. As far as I am aware, with the Department of Public Works, I am unaware of I am unaware, and maybe someone else can chime in. I don't know if we have legal counsel with us today, but I do not know if the Planning Commission has the ability to waive it lies with the Department of Public Works. They have the ability to waive that from a professional design standpoint, engineering standpoint. I'm not sure that the Planning Commission does, Jim, at this point, without any kind of feedback at this point yet from DPW.
I would agree with that, Laura.
Okay. So it is noted that that was received. It's being processed. It is notable that this is the sign right here is for end of county maintenance. We do maintain Arthur Avenue right now as is. And where DPW goes with that request, they have all of that outlined in regards to the trees, the location of the trees, etc. They have that in writing from Mr. Lemmerman. So I think the requests today before you are the two that were presented in your report. Thank you, Jim, for weighing in on that.
Yeah, thank you. I guess 2 out of 3 we'll go with, and hopefully won't have to come back.
I have one more clarification. Laura, you said that in the beginning of your discussion, if we do not approve the additional users to the use in common driveway, that the development would have to be reconfigured or rethought. Is that what you stated? That
yeah, so my statement was that it would have to undergo a redesign for the purposes of determining the cluster versus the conventional plan. The conventional plan has to be a viable plan. So if there were not a request to add additional users to the use in common driveway, we have a plan that doesn't work yet. Does that make sense? So where the engineer and developer would go with it from there, I do not know. But it is a necessary modification in order to create additional lots, additional users.
Got it. So it sounds like our first discussion then is the additional users on the use in common before we can even approve the cluster versus the conventional. So I guess we'll start the discussion on the use in common. Does anybody have any thoughts, any discussion? It seems to be a recurring theme in the county.
Well, I'm happy to lead off with a few comments. This is Jeff Weathers. It seems to me that this is probably sort of the quintessential example of what the code is talking about unusual circumstances of shape and topography and other physical features or conditions. It seems to me we tick every single one of the boxes along there, and certainly Mr. Lemmerman's letter puts forward affirmative evidence in my mind in terms of satisfying those requirements, where he talks about the county road as it would disrupt the existing users, create unnecessary disturbance immediately adjacent to Liberty Reservoir during construction of a road, and its associated stormwater management facilities cause environmentally sensitive existing specimen trees to be removed, etc. There's an adequate area for emergency vehicle turnaround and deliveries near the limits of the use in common driveway, specifically at Morris Lane. So to my way of thinking, at least, I'm one member of this commission, I think that this is, to my way of looking at it, easily satisfies the requirements under the 155.025 use in common driveways. And so I'm one voice in favor of the request for the 10 users for the use in common.
Yes, I agree with Jeff. I've seen several properties with a similar situation, and I think it's a much better idea to go this way and add them like this. So I have no objections.
I will just say as a voice of caution, I don't know where the tipping point is. I mean, I haven't been on this commission as long as you have. I'm the newest member, and 10 to me is a lot. And again, I don't know at what number we say, just in general in our own minds, and we each probably have our own opinion of it. 10 is an awful lot, and my concern is frankly, safety. A fire truck comes down this drive. We see the SUV sitting there in the top left corner of this photograph. We put a fire truck on this road, an emergency vehicle, and if they go to a wrong address, or let's assume it's the right address, and they're just trying to get out and go to the next, the next emergency, the next need, they're going to have to back down this driveway, I would think. And so I'll just simply say, again, I live very close to this. I don't have a problem with the cluster. My issue is giving them a turnaround at further down this road, not disturbing the Scarlet Oak, but driving down that road, that drive, and giving the emergency vehicles an opportunity further down where they could potentially turn around. I'm fine with the cluster design. I agree with you all. I think it's a good solution in terms of conserving certain areas. But I am concerned with the number of users, vehicles, and their access to this property.
So just to address that, I think that's a great comment. That is part of our use in common driveway standards. I mentioned the pullover. There also has to be a turnaround. So this extension, this Osprey Nest Drive, is required to have a place to turn around at the end, and that has been talked through and addressed with engineering review, and John Lemmerman has addressed that. John, if you want to add anything to that, you may.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate that, we think that there's adequate turnaround vehicles or space at the end of Arthur Avenue. And in addition, there's adequate turnaround space at the end of their proposed, well, the existing driveway that we're proposing is Osprey Nest Drive, because of Morris Lane provides, and if it's not, we will have to widen it to meet the current meet the requirements during this of an emergency vehicle turnaround at the end of that also. So there'll be ample opportunities for emergency vehicles or large vehicles to turn around.
This is Jeff. I would also say in response, I think, Pete's issues that he raises are really good issues. Safety is always something that as a commission we focus on. And so in my view, those are the right questions to ask. And John and Laura, I appreciate your response there. And then, to Pete, to your question about what's the tipping point, 10 is a lot. I tend to, my way of looking at it is I look at each of these scenarios, each of these cases that comes before us individually. And so in my mind, I don't have sort of I agree 10 is a lot of users, and there are use in common issues that have come before us. Gene Canale will be glad to tell you lots of stories around those, because he's usually a voice of caution also, and I rely on that. But I think it just depends on the circumstances. We've seen some of these plans, similar size clusters and houses, and I would be right there saying 10 in that circumstance is too many. This being coming out of this community, developed in the way it has on the reservoir, some existing houses have been there for years using this lane, and then also Barnes Lane. It's sort of an interesting development over the years in terms of how it's being used, and it seems to work. And then the thoughtfulness, I think, that John has put into this on behalf of his client. So I agree with you, Pete. 10 is a lot, but on this plan, I'm comfortable with it. So that doesn't mean anybody else is, but I am. So I think they've done a nice job, and I think it's been a great presentation.
This is Gene Canale. Yes, in the past have been a voice concerning use in common driveways. I think 10 is too much also, but I can't, I'm sitting here thinking how I could vote against this with all the information that's been provided. I do have a problem with the safety issue, because I live on a common use driveway where there's 8 people, and we're the first ones into the roadway. And the increase in traffic with UPS, the post office, and of course our good friends from Amazon, the roadway is just become very, very unsafe for any small children playing in the area. Fortunately, we don't have any to this at this date, but there will be in the future. So as I said, I would hope that the maintenance agreement is provided for this road so that individual buyers understand their responsibility to repair this road if so needed, and someday it will be. So that's just my word of caution. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree with what Jeff was saying. 10 is a lot. And I guess due to the environmental sensitive nature, it's definitely better, more advantageous than, first of all, a roadway. I'm plowing through there and things. So I agree. And the cluster is definitely much preferred, especially because of preservation of that southern area around the cell tower. So, although I don't get a vote, so I think, but I agree with what has been presented. So, I don't know if anybody has any more comments or wants to make a. Do we need an actual vote? Correct, Laura?
We do, and I also just want to note that we did have 2 citizens contact us. I'm not sure if they're on the line today or not. After your discussion, you may want to.
Yes, if we have any public who would like to make public comment on this plan, go ahead. We're going to unmute you and you can go ahead and make a comment if you would like to.
Well, I don't know how this works. It's new to me, so I'm not sure what the protocol is. But one of the concerns, the people who live on Arctic.
Sir, just identify yourself and go ahead and make your comment.
Yeah, my name is Nick Dotson, and I live on Arthur Avenue. And many of the others who live on Arthur Avenue are concerned about the increase of traffic, which is already brought up, just even delivery trucks, there are going to be more. And we realize this is probably going to go forward with the plan. So to help reduce the speed of these delivery trucks and other people on the street, we would like to, somehow request to get some speed humps and also maybe reduce the speed limit on Arthur Avenue. Is this the right place to request that?
That request would go into our Department of Public Works, who owns and maintains the road and have criteria for when and where speed bumps are put in. So I can make a note of that. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, I can put you directly in touch with the Department of Public Works. Okay?
Okay. And you did mention the, I guess the other side of the property being being subdivided, their access is going to be via Barnes Lane. Is that correct?
So the properties to the furthest east, let's say, the subject property and the off conveyance that has never been developed. There's a parcel down there that's never been developed. It is its own lot. Those would access Barnes Lane, correct? And be restricted to Barnes Lane. Mm-hmm.
All right, that's all I have. I don't know if any others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. If we have any other callers who would like to make a comment, go ahead at this time. Please identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Tim Miller. I'm a neighbor on Arthur Avenue as well.
Go ahead, Tim. We can hear you.
Yes, I think in terms of the two plans, I can speak for the environmental nature of the area. We all, a ton of neighbors who enjoy walking back in those woods, and anything we can do to preserve that open space would definitely be preferred. Agree that traffic and delivery speed is a concern. I think more so than necessarily turning around to before Morris Lane does have some room to turn around there, and I think that's important. But yeah, the speed is a concern, but I don't know that either of the plans necessarily is going to impact that as 10 or 7 users, whatever it may be. But yeah, we definitely prefer the open space option over the two.
Thank you. Not sure if we have any other callers. It doesn't appear so. So with that, I guess we have to have any motions or.
So this is Jeff Weathers. I guess unless somebody tells me otherwise, I'll just do separate motions, 2 motions. The first motion I'll make is that we approve the modification to the use in common driveway from 7 to 10.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion from Mr. Walters with a second by Ms. Kirchner for allow the modification for the use in common driveway from 7 to 10. And I take it you're going to do a voice vote? I mean, a roll call?
Yes, I am. Mr. Canale?
Yes.
Ms. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Gosnell?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Yes.
Mr. Lester?
Yes.
Please let the record reflect that 5 are in favor and the motion carries.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion from Mr. Walters with a second by Ms. Kirchner for allow the modification for the use in common driveway from 7 to 10. And I take it you're going to do a voice vote? I mean, a roll call?
Yes, I am. Mr. Canale?
Yes.
Ms. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Gosnell?
Yes.
Mr. Walters?
Okay, Jeff Waters again. I'll make a motion that we approve the cluster plan as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second for approval of the cluster plan.
Mr. Canali,
Yes.
Ms. Kirkner,
Yes.
Mr. Gosnell,
Yes.
Mr. Walters,
Yes.
Mr. Lester.
Yes.
So 5 are in favor, and that motion carries as well. Thank you.
And can I just add a clarifier to that? It's an approval of the pursuit of the cluster plan. It does still need to go through all agency reviews and approvals, so.
I don't know, Laura. I heard him say as is. Just kidding.
Thanks,
Thank
John.
you, everybody.
Yeah,
Thank
that was
you.
Thank
the-
you.
Also, do we have, Cynthia has the authority to approve the final plan without us taking action. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Unless
And
you
then,
want-
Laurie- What was that?
I think that's unless the commission wants to see it again, correct, Laura?
No, in this case, as a minor subdivision, our typical process is to process through all the technical review agencies till we have final approvals and then present to the chair as a minor subdivision. So it would not come back before you as is typical. I anticipate you can always request anything you like. So if you did want to see it back for some reason, we would bring it back. We could bring it back to you, but that's not typical process and the code doesn't require that.
Yeah, I'm not asking that to be brought back. I just want to make sure that the chair could do it and we didn't need to, could approve it and that we didn't need to take any action to clarify that, at least from my perspective.
Correct.
And then, Laurie, you had mentioned that there really is no role for our commission on approval of the DPW design manual waiver. Is that your understanding?
Well, my understanding is that development review is looking for a determination out of the Department of Public Works first. And then if that was to be disputed, I would have to look at who and how that is appealed, if there is an appeal process. I can't speak to that. I don't know if Jim Allman is still on and can speak to that process or not.
The only reason I raise it, and Jim, I'm sorry to cut you off, is I'm just trying to think of, John had mentioned common sense prevailing sometimes. I'm a big fan of that. Even though I'm a lawyer, some of us sometimes try to find some common sense around. And anyway, if there's given the discussion today and while it's on our mind, if there's anything we can do to, even if it were a conditional approval or a comment or something, in terms of our commission, having no objection to the waiver. I don't know how we'd feel about that, but I'm just trying to think if we can avoid having to have the developer go through another step and another process and a delay and then bring it back over, this waiver of a cul-de-sac. Is there something we can do that's practical and doesn't interfere with the requirements? I'm a fan of those kinds of things.
Right. I was just, for preliminary subdivisions, the Planning Commission has the authority to add on modifications or conditions. However, I would have to agree with Laura that I think the Department of Public Works should take a look at it to see that the road qualifies for the sort of traffic calming devices that are available, so that the commission doesn't put on some sort of condition that the Department of Public Works sees as not feasible.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'm going to move on to item number 10, our concept subdivision plan for P200032 Bachman Overlook Section 2.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Control room, if I could have presentation abilities. Okay, perfect. So hopefully everybody can see my screen here. So as mentioned, the next project on the agenda is Bachman Overlook Section 2, file number P-20-0032. With me is, it looks like Jeff Ziegler with CLSI, and it looks like in his office he also has Mr. Rickle with CLSI, Aaron Valentine with CLSI, as well as Richard Hall, who's representing the owner. Hopefully you guys will chime in. If I missed anybody over there, I apologize. And with this project, they are proposing a 2-lot subdivision with 1 remaining portion. This plan is before the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration of a concept major subdivision plan, which means that there's no action required with this. So this project is located on the outskirts of Manchester. So this pink line here is the municipal limits of Manchester, and this is Hanover Pike here, and here's Tracy's Mill here. So you see that this proposed site is on the east side of Tracy's Mill, south of Meadowview Drive. And this is in election district number 6. So the subject property outlined in yellow here is roughly 15.25 acres and is the remaining portion of the amended plat of Bachman Overlook, which would be the first section. And that was recorded last year in May. The property is not developed, as you can see here, and it slopes upwards from Tracy's Mill Road to the south property line. So it has a pretty gradual slope up as you move south, and it is roughly a 130-foot vertical foot elevation change. And as you can see, the southern property boundary is comprised of a wooded area and is encompassed by a forest conservation easement, as you see by the green shade on here. And there are no streams or FEMA 100-year floodplain designations on site. The property lies in the agricultural zoning district, as do the adjoining properties surrounding it. All properties are undeveloped, or I'm sorry, all surrounding properties are either undeveloped or are developed with single residential dwellings. Properties are outside of water and sewer service areas, priority funding areas, and the designated growth areas. So just for a very brief history, Section 1 of Bachman Overlook proposed the creation of lots 1 through 3, which I believe are these 3 up front here, and what was reviewed as a minor subdivision. Section 1 was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission in 2006. So what Section 2 is proposing is the creation of lot number 4 and lot number 5. And both of those proposed lots are to be right at 2 acres, and they will both reside along Tracy's Mill Road, which you can see here. The remaining portion, as you can see, will then be roughly 10.75 acres, and if I am correct, it will still be entitled to, I believe, 1 more lot. Along with that, a roughly half-acre parcel, shown as Parcel A on the plans here, will be deeded to the adjoining property owner. Both lots are proposing the development of single-family dwellings with individual access to Tracy's Mill Road, and they will both have private well and septic systems. So the concept subdivision plan was initially submitted June 30th last year, 2020. The plan was subject to citizen involvement at the August 24th, 2020 Technical Review Committee meeting. One citizen, an owner of an adjoining property, raised concern with an existing culvert placement that was within the first section of Bachman Overlook that was causing rainwater to wash out his property. Mr. Hall, who was also at the meeting, stated he would remedy the problem after the meeting. Other than that, there have been no calls or letters received regarding this proposed subdivision. So to give an idea on how the property looks, this is along Tracy's Mill Road, and this is across the road looking back onto the site. You can see a gradual hill there. And then onto the next slide, you see this is the sign from the first section. And this is on the site looking back towards that wooded area. And then this is on the site looking forward towards Tracy's Mill Road. So the plan is exempt from the floodplain code. As currently designed, the landscaping ordinance does not apply to this project. Grading and sediment control has granted concept approval. Engineering review and State Highway Administration has granted approval of the concept plans. The Carroll County Health Department has comments, but they will be addressed during the preliminary plan review process. Forest conservation will be addressed by way of on-site afforestation with an easement granted to the county. So they're going to add another little sliver here to that already existing forest conservation easement area. The Bureau of Resource Management has granted concept stormwater management approval. Stormwater management will be addressed via microbial facilities on the fronts of the proposed sites, and they would drain to a culvert which will run under Tracy's Mill Road. In accordance with the site development plan memorandum from the Department of Planning, the proposed land use is consistent with the 2014 Carroll County Master Plan's land use designation of agriculture. And finally, the project is subject to the provisions of Concurrency Management, Chapter 156, and will be tested prior to presentation of the plan to the Commission for approval of the preliminary plan. At this time, I did run the numbers as they stand. And again, this is not for anything but your knowledge, but all facilities and services are adequate with the exception of fire and EMS, which is approaching inadequate. So for adequacy, it has to, I think the response times have to be less than 8 minutes. And for approaching inadequate, the response times are between 8 and 10 minutes. And I believe for this, which it is in the Lineborough Fire and EMS District, it was at roughly 8.5 minutes response time. So again, no reason for that, but for your knowledge, but they will be tested officially before being brought back as a preliminary plan. And with that, that concludes everything. I'd be happy to answer any questions or anybody from the CLSI team or the owner, if you'd like to state anything, certainly feel free.
Thank you. So the initial test of adequacy, that includes the schools too?
Correct. Yeah. So with this being a major subdivision, it'll get tested for schools, police, fire protection, EMS, and roads as well. With it being water and sewer, well and septic, there won't be any tests for water and sewer.
Right. And 8.5 minutes for Lineborough is actually pretty good in this area. I don't think you could. It takes 10 minutes to get everywhere around here. So, would the owner or developer like to make any comments in addition to what David had given us?
I really don't have. I think it was presented properly. I don't have any problems with what's been said. We have, as you say, it is a rural area, and I would hate to see. My grandson is one of the volunteers at Lineborough, and they hustle pretty good, but you can't get anywhere within 10 minutes over there because they're sort of out in the country. But I think the only thing that wasn't stated is we have a garage on an adjoining property that is under an agreement to be removed to affect a better sight distance. And we've gone, I think, a little bit above and beyond. And on lot number 4, we've got we're going to do a dual entrance so that there will be only one entrance there that will serve that lot and the remaining portion as it approaches Tracy Mill. They will be separated once they get off of the right of way, but there'll be one entrance double wide, which is of course a lot safer. So that's the only other comments.
And David, this is Jeff Ziegler. Just moving the plans forward, I just want to maybe ask and acknowledge, can we go in with a preliminary and final subdivision plans moving forward, since there's really not going to be any change?
So that's actually a pretty good question. Let us talk internally on how to move forward with this plan. You know, if you're saying there's not going to be too much change with that, we'll certainly discuss that option to have a joint preliminary and final review.
Okay, thank you.
I would appreciate that. I know technically it has to be classified as a major, but we've done pretty much all the technical work already. Everybody knows exactly what's going to happen. We'd appreciate if we could go with a joint meeting next time.
Any comments from the commission at this time? It seems pretty straightforward.
I agree. It seems very straightforward.
We don't need to vote on this. This is just a concept plan. So any suggestions or changes to the plan before they bring it back to us, now's the time to make it. If not,
I like the single driveway that you're talking about. It does make it safer to have only one entrance, wider driveway. You talked about moving the garage. I think all those things are very positive. So I'm in favor of everything you're doing. I think it looks good.
All right, thank you.
Yes, I don't see any issues, so I think it was very well presented.
okay. With that, I think pretty straightforward for you guys. And we'll see you soon.
Very good. Will you be getting back to us on that dual preliminary final decision?
Yes, so I'll look to have an answer to you guys either before the end of today or sometime tomorrow for that. So sometime here soon, I'll look to have an answer.
Thank you, and appreciate getting it on the schedule for us today. That works very well. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. So our next item on our agenda is a recess. I have 11:15 right now. Let's take 10 minutes since we've gone quite a long time, and see you guys at 10:55. ready? I'm going to call back to order our meeting. And with that, we'll move to item number 12, the concept site plan for S21002, the Greater Baltimore Temple, second amended.
Okay, perfect. So we will move right along here. Okay, so hello again. David Beecraft, Bureau of Development Review. As stated, the next one on the agenda is Greater Baltimore Temple, second amended site plan, file number S-20-0002. I'm not sure who's all here. I know I've seen Mr. Ziegler again with CLSI and Dean Camlin, who's the architect for the project, but I'm not sure if anyone from the owner is here. If so, please chime in and let me know.
So thank you. And this is Ram Javia. I'm board member for Greater Baltimore Temple.
Okay, perfect. So with this project, the owner / developer is proposing an addition onto the existing sanctuary that exists on site. The plan is before the Planning and Zoning Commission for consideration of a concept site plan, which means no action is required. However, the Planning Commission may consider delegating approval of the final site plan to the Planning Commission chair. So this project is located at 2909 Bloom Road in Finksburg. And to give you an idea as to where exactly that is, this is Baltimore Boulevard 140, this is Gamber Road, and this is Bloom Road. So it wraps around here. And this is within election district number 4. So the property itself is roughly 5.5 acres and is comprised of 2909 Bloom Road and 2935 Bloom Road. The property currently hosts a religious establishment / sanctuary that spans from 2909 to 2935 via a walking path that you can see here. The use of the property was previously reviewed by the county and 2 previous site plans. One from 1993, which was for the original temple here, and one from 2011, which was to include this property into the site plan. The property lies within the R40,000 zoning district and has existing access onto Bloom Road, as you can see here. So if I go back a slide, the adjoining properties to the north and the west are zoned either R40 or conservation, and they host residential dwellings. The property to the east is zoned C2 and hosts a planned business center, which is known as Finksburg Plaza. And the southern adjoining property is zoned C2 as well and hosts a funeral home. So the existing building is located in the middle of the site with a dumpster for the property located to the west. An existing monument sign is at the entrance from Bloom Road, which is located around here. The sign is right in front of a stormwater management facility here. There's a wooded area that encompasses the eastern portion of the property, as you can see, and there are trees that reside along the remaining sides of the property and kind of throughout the site. The site currently offers 63 parking spaces located north and east of the building, so right in this area. And there are no FEMA 100-year floodplain designations on site or any streams on site. So the developer proposes to add a 3,340 square foot addition onto the southern portion of the existing building. The proposed addition will be used as a means of creating additional space for the existing use and will not result in an increase to the sanctuary seating or building capacity. The plan does not propose any changes to this existing building, with the exception of the connection that will connect it to the proposed addition. And to give you an idea on how it would look, we were provided these renderings of the addition in relation to the existing building, and you can see they are looking to essentially follow the same pattern to make it seem seamless. So the concept site plan was initially submitted on January 29th, 2021. The plan was subject to citizen involvement at the March 22nd, 2021 Technical Review Committee meeting. There were no citizens in attendance and no phone calls or letters have been received in reference to the proposed plan. And to give a better idea as to how it looks now, this is the southwestern where the addition is proposed. You can just see different views of the building. And this is a couple other areas on site. So this is part of that forest conservation area. This is the existing monument sign, the stormwater management facility, and the main entrance off of Bloom Road onto the property. So this plan is exempt from the code requirements of floodplain management. Approval was granted by the Carroll County Health Department and the Department of Public Works Bureau of Utilities. The concept plan has received concept approval from Water Resources Review, Landscape, and Grading Review. Forest conservation was addressed within a previous site plan by way of an on-site forest conservation easement. Engineering Review and State Highway Administration have both approved the plan with existing access, and site compliance has stated that the plan complies with the requirements of Maryland Accessibility Code. The Bureau of Resource Management has granted final stormwater management exemption. The proposed limit of disturbance for the project is less than 5,000 square feet, which means the exemption is in accordance with Carroll County Public Law, Section 151.016C. In accordance with the Site Development Plan Memorandum from the Department of Planning, the proposed land use is consistent with the 2013 Finksburg Corridor Plan land use designation of low density residential, And finally, the final site plan will be tested and reviewed for adequacy of public facilities in accordance with Chapter 155. And I'll just mention again that this is a concept plan. No action is required. However, if you feel the need, you can certainly designate the approval of the final plan to the chair. And with that, that is the end of my report. If you have any questions, I'm sure myself or the engineer or the owner would be happy to answer.
Thank you, David. Does the engineer or applicant have anything else they'd like to add?
No, we're just here to answer any comments and move this forward through final. Thank you.
This is Jeff Wuthers. This seems very straightforward to me. So, and I don't know, David, in this case, do we need to make a motion for the chair to have the authority to approve the final?
So generally, the plan will automatically come back before the full commission. But obviously, if you guys feel the need that you don't need to see it again, then I guess you would need a motion for that. I believe that's how it's been done in the past.
All right. Well, I'll make a motion that the plan, that the chair have the authority to approve the final site plan.
I would second that.
Are we just going to do a voice vote?
Yeah, I'm not going to do a roll call because this is a easy motion to approve. So that's it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
No other comments at this time? Anybody else have any other comments for the concept plan? Yeah, it looks pretty straightforward, so that was easy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your presentation.
We greatly appreciate, thank you very much, and you all have a nice day.
Thank you. With that, I'll move on to item number 13, which is the final site plan for S200012, the Union Bridge Solar.
Okay, so this one, I'm hoping everybody will find kind of familiar. I think this was before the Planning Commission in March, if I'm not mistaken. But again, David Beecraft, Bureau of Development Review. This is the final site plan for Union Bridge Solar, file number S-20-0012. With me are a bunch of people. I'm gonna try to go through, and then hopefully at the end, if I miss anybody, they can certainly chime in. But I see Brian Morrissey, Melissa Hall, and Dane Bauer, who are all representing owner/developer. As the engineer, I see Daphne Matthews and Mark Chrisman, who are with DMW. And for the Town and Union Bridge, I see Ned Cuman and John McGuire. If there's anybody I missed, please chime in and let us know. Okay, perfect. First try. That's pretty good. So for those who may not be familiar or may not remember, this is proposing a ground-mounted photovoltaic facility. And this is before the Planning and Zoning Commission as a final site plan. So we're looking for consideration and approval. So this is located right on the outskirts, and actually part of it being within the Town and Union Bridge. So the town's municipal limits are shown as this pink line here. And the site itself is on the west and east side of Green Valley Road, which is Maryland Route 75, and south of White Street. And this is within election district number 12. So the property as a whole is comprised of 195 acres, and the property is split between Frederick County, Carroll County, and the Town and Union Bridge. The property consists of agricultural field with a farmhouse and various outbuildings located near the county line. So this is where all those buildings, this is where the county line lies, and this greenish shading is the FEMA floodplain designation. The property is split by Green Valley Road. So again, here's the east side of Green Valley Road. They're looking to put some here, and then on the west side for the portion over here. There is a stream, which is Sam's Creek, on the property, which runs along the boundary between Carroll and Frederick County. All property road frontage lies within State Highway Administration right-of-way. And while a portion of the property lies outside of the Town and Union Bridge, it is within the Union Bridge's priority funding area and growth area. The portion of property that does not lie within the Town and Union Bridge is zoned light industrial, which is I-1, heavy industrial, which is I-2, and conservation. The south border of the property is defined by the Carroll County, Frederick County line. Properties to the north reside within the Town of Union Bridge, and adjoining to the east is the Lehigh Quarry. So the developer proposes the installation of a ground-mounted photovoltaic facility within a roughly 41.5 acre subject area. So the proposed facility will cover roughly 33 acres of the 68.3 acre parcel or portion in the unincorporated part of Carroll County. And it will cover roughly 8.5 acres of the 26.5 acre portion in the town of Union Bridge. So within the unincorporated portion of the subject area, all of those solar panels lie strictly within the industrial zoning. There are no solar panels proposed on the portion of property in the conservation zoning district. The facility is split by Green Valley Road and will be connected via an underground electric duct. In accordance with code, the solar energy conversion facility is a permitted use in the industrial zoning district. Access to the site will occur from a proposed connection from White Street, which is located up here. And that will be reviewed with the town of Union Bridge. Another access point will be from the existing access to the farmhouse from Green Valley Road, and that has been reviewed by State Highway Administration. And they're also proposing another access point onto the portion east of the site, which is shown here. So all access points will lead to a gated entry to the solar facility, which is surrounded by a 6-foot-high chain link fence, except along Green Valley Road, where the fence will be 8 foot high, and that was for glare mitigation purposes. A 45 foot wide landscape buffer is proposed outside the fence on both sides of Green Valley Road. Landscaping is also proposed along the inside perimeter of the fence that is not abutting the roadway. So on August 25th, 2020, an initial site development plan package was submitted to development review and distributed to review agencies. The site plan was subject to citizen involvement at the September 28th, 2020 Technical Review Committee meeting. There were no citizens in attendance at the meeting. Mr. Cuman with the town of Union Bridge, he is the town planning consultant, attended the meeting and has participated on behalf of the town during the review process. After the meeting, an email was received from a citizen who was requesting a copy of the plans but did not pose any opposition. The concept site plan for the subject property was reviewed by the County Planning and Zoning Commission on March 16, 2021. At that meeting, the owner and developer were requesting approval for modifications to setback distances applicable to certain areas of the site. Per the county code, all setbacks are to be 100 feet. However, per code, the developer requested various setbacks, which were 50 foot, 62 foot, 73 foot, and 75 foot with supplemental landscaping. And as a reminder, I'll go through where those were. So on the west side of Green Valley Road, they were proposing a 75-foot setback along the roadway instead of the 100-foot required. And on the east side along Green Valley Road, they were requesting a 73-foot setback. And along the other property lines on the east side of Green Valley Road, they were proposing the 50 and the 62-foot setbacks. After discussion during the meeting, it was determined the commission did not have any issues with the setbacks modifications that were being requested. No citizens spoke during the meeting, but an email was received after the meeting and was just requesting an update to the project. Afterwards, the concept site plan for the property was reviewed by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission on March 18th, 2021. After a brief discussion, it was determined the commission for the town did not have any issues with the concept plan and granted approval. So as another reminder as to how the site looks, this is the supplemental landscaping that's shown on site. This was an exhibit provided by the engineer. So how the site looks now, you can see it is used primarily for ag for the majority of the site. And looking around the site, you do see the existing building and residential dwellings. And this is the existing access point. And this is the access point from White Street, which has been reviewed by the town. And this is roughly the access point on the east side that State Highway has approved. So the Bureau of Resource Management has granted final stormwater management approval. Stormwater management will be addressed with level spreaders to discharge points at the perimeter of the site. Forest Conservation has granted an exemption. The plan is exempt from the manual requirements of landscaping, but the developer is proposing landscaping in conjunction with a setback modification. The plan has received approval from floodplain management and water resource management, with easements being required around the existing stream. And State Highway Administration and Engineering Review have granted final approval. So pursuant to Chapter 155, staff recommends approval of the site plan subject to the following conditions. Number one, that the developer enters into a public works agreement with Carroll County that guarantees completion of the improvements. Number two, that a stormwater management easement and maintenance agreement be granted to the county commissioners of Carroll County for the portion outside of the town of Union Bridge as an easement of access to the county commissioners or authorized representatives. And that is to be recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number three, that a stormwater management conservation area easement be granted to the county commissioners of Carroll County simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number four, that a forested water resource protection easement be granted to the county commissioners simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number five, that a floodplain easement be granted to the county commissioners simultaneously with the public works agreement. Number six, that a landscape maintenance agreement be recorded simultaneously with the public works agreement. And finally, number seven, that any changes to this plan require an amended site development plan to be approved by the county Planning and Zoning Commission. And that is all I had for the report for this.
Thank you. Would anybody from the applicant like to make any additional comments at this time?
Hi, this is Brian Morrissey from Citizens Energy, representing the owner of UB Solar. No additional comments, David. Thank you for going through the detail there, and just are here to answer any questions that the commission may have. So thank you all for your consideration on this.
Thank you. So yeah, we did recently see this. I don't know if anybody has any additional comments. We went through this pretty in depth last time.
This is Jeff Weathers. I just have a clarification I wanted to get. I know in the letter that we were provided from the town of Union Bridge, it specifically asked that the special landscape buffer exhibit prepared and submitted be incorporated with the final plan set. And I know we talked about that as well last time. And I can't really tell. I'm looking at the site plan, and I know pages 5 through 9 of it deal with landscaping. But is what was a separate exhibit now part of the final site plan?
So that is correct. On the one slide here, if it'll let me go back, that was the exhibit that the town was provided. And as you mentioned, that was a separate exhibit outside of the plan set. And it has since been incorporated into the plan set. And if you give me a sec, it looks like it's on sheet number 11.
Oh, 11. Okay. Excellent. I see it. Okay, I've got it. Thank you. Well, I'm happy to make a motion, but I guess, I don't know if there's anybody. Linda, can you tell if there are any callers on the line? Anybody, or Cynthia, I don't know if you have some crystal ball to look in and see if anyone has any comments.
It doesn't look like there's any callers on the line. It looks like all others on that aren't us are with this plan.
All right, well, I know there's opportunity for more comment even after a motion in a second, so I'll just go ahead and make a motion pursuant to Chapter 155 that we approve the final site plan subject to the 7 conditions that are listed in the staff report.
I will second.
All right, so we have a motion by Mr. Weathers with a second by Mr. Kirschner for approval of the site development plan pursuant to Chapter 155 with the 7 conditions outlined in the staff report.
Mr. Canali,
Yes.
Ms. Kirkner,
Yes.
Mr. Gosnell,
Yes.
Mr. Wathers,
Yes.
and Mr. Lester.
Yes.
Please let the record reflect that 5 are in favor and the motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, and good luck.
Great. Thank you. We appreciate it.
So the next on our agenda is a recess, but I think we could skip that at this time. We'll move on then to item number 15, which is our comprehensive rezoning discussion of the residential text.
So good morning. I have with me today Brenda Denny, who is going to be going over with you actually the last bit of information that we do have to share with you that will be new to you for the residential text, and hoping that at our next meeting we can finish up whatever we didn't get to and have our public comment period begin June 1 through June 30th. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Brenda to go over with you her presentation for today. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you see the change summary on the screen?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. So, thank you. All right. I know you are pressed for time, but I think we can get through this pretty quickly. We have changes to administration and enforcement to review today, and then the specific uses for temporary and seasonal uses. So we'll start with administration and enforcement, and we have essentially 2 types of changes. We have some revisions to the exceptions and modifications, which are essentially simplifications and clarifications of what's in there. And then we have changes to the process related to variances. And so I'm going to start with the exceptions and modifications, which you see here on page 32. You'll see on B there that really what we're doing here is just adding additions to be subject to these exceptions and modifications, not just the initial building itself. So if we move down, no, we're under B, lot area modifications. So the next clarification was we kind of simplified this section and just said anything that's was created before, this is essentially before zoning was created, wouldn't have minimum lot areas. And then everything that was under number 2 there was moved down to section C, which is setback modification, because it seemed like it was more applicable to that section. So then the only other thing is 3 here was revised to, again, clarify that it applies to both building a new building as well as an addition, and then simplify it. So under setback modification, this is the information number 2 here that was moved from above. So the information is the same, except for C, we shortened to simplify, but it's still 10 feet. And D is new, and this is a clarification, again, to have this applicable to additions as well as new buildings. And essentially what it says is that you can't build an addition. The addition cannot go wherever the line of the addition is cannot go beyond the line of the existing house if it's already outside of the existing setback requirement. And down on number 3, we've just again kind of clarified by making this structures not just buildings and saying this refers to setbacks. Then we go down into projections into the yards. And number 1 was eliminated, which was carports and porches. And then clarified in number 2, which is now number 1, to be applicable to the setback area. So that's essentially the only changes that were made under exception modifications. And then we come down to application limits. So let me start off by saying, if you recall way back when we were talking about definitions, we added the definition of administrative adjustment. We didn't have one. And we clarified the definition for variance to make that specific to BZA. So in the Maryland land use article, we have the ability to do variance or administrative adjustment, and our code in multiple places, as you can see here, says variance or administrative adjustment, which could be a little confusing. So to try to simplify, clarify, and streamline the process, we've made administrative adjustments applicable to the action that the zoning administrator takes, and variances are the applicable to action that the BZA would take. So what we have first is the list of bulk requirements that the zoning administrator can make a decision on when it comes to, so for the zoning administrator, it's going to be an administrative adjustment. If somebody applies for an adjustment that is beyond what is allowed, then this is the list of items that he can make a decision on. And right now, this whole list, it looks no, but it's just moved from below here. The difference is that we've removed the 75% or 80% or the various different percentages and just made it 100%. And then number 2, I think, is just moved. And then some of this was moved to other sections you can see here and has already been covered. So then when we get down to the process, the way the process works now is, and I have Jay's on as well he can correct me for anything I say that's not correct. But essentially the way the process works now is somebody would apply for a change to what the code says is allowed. And that would go to the zoning administrator. He'd have to hold a public hearing and then make a decision. So everything requires a public hearing. So what we're doing with this process and the changes that we'll review here is simplifying it, streamlining it for both, simplifying it for the public as well as for the applicant and staff, and making it easier, more predictable in terms of all those percentages above. That makes it more predictable. It's just 100%. So what happens now with this process would be that the applicant would apply for the adjustment. The zoning administrator would post the property and send a notice out to adjoining property owners. Then anybody neighboring would have 2 weeks to say that they would like a public hearing to be held. And if somebody requests a public hearing within that 2 weeks, a public hearing will be scheduled. If nobody requests a public hearing, then the zoning administrator can just go ahead and approve or make a decision, I should say, on that adjustment. And then the decision itself, the adjoining property owners would have 30 days to appeal to the BZA. So it doesn't have to go to the BZA unless they appeal that decision. Then there are other things if it goes beyond the 100% change, or if it is an appeal to the BZA, then again, they would hold a public hearing. So what we're doing is we're eliminating a lot of not having to do a public hearing for every single thing that's requested, only if adjoining property owners want a public hearing. And then they can also appeal the decision. So essentially, that's what all of these changes that you see in this section are doing. It's still providing for posting of the property. Adjoining property owners are still being notified and still being given a chance to request a public hearing. It's just we're not holding the public hearing unless there's some reason why somebody wants a public hearing.
Brenda, can you what is an adjoining property owner? What is our definition? Just people who are adjacent or in the area?
I'm going to let Jay answer that question. Jay?
Jay, you're muted.
Hey guys, I'm sorry about that. My mouse wasn't working properly. Could you ask the question again so I just have it clear in my head?
What exactly is the adjoining property owner? What does that mean?
Adjoining property owner is any property that touches the property of the applicant's property. So that's any adjoiner or adjacent person who is actually touching his property, and the people directly across the street from him. They're all the ones who would get a letter as required, which is required now. They're the ones who would get the letter notifying them of the hearing. Anybody who is nearby or is not touching the property, they would not get a letter per se, but we will be posting the property with a sign. So if anybody in the area wants to know what's going on, that will be there to notify them.
Thank you.
So Jay, this is Jeff Walters, and just, I don't remember exactly what the text said, but are only adjoining property owners allowed to request a hearing, or can anybody drive by, see the posted notice and say, I want to request a hearing?
It's not specifically spelled out that way, but I would say somebody who is in the area and they want to have a hearing, they could request a hearing. I have seen no problem with that. It's like I say, it's not specifically spelled out that way, but I mean, if they have a concern or something that needs to be addressed, that's the time to address it.
And what about appeal rights? Say there's no hearing requested, Jay, you make a ruling as the zoning administrator, and then somebody who's not an adjoining property owner feels aggrieved. Are they able to, do they have standing to appeal it to the BZA, or only those that are contiguous to the property or across the street?
Anybody in the county can request an appeal of any of my decisions whatsoever, whether they're through a public hearing or not. They can request a hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals to appeal that decision.
And you said it's anybody in the county can do that?
Yes, anybody.
Wow, that's broad standing. Okay.
I mean, if theoretically, and I've never had this happen, but if we have a hearing in Lineborough scheduled and someone from Mount Airy decides they want to appeal that decision, they're more than welcome to.
Okay, good. Well, people certainly aren't excluded by that process, that's for sure. Thank you.
That's definitely one thing we wanted to do with this process, is to make sure we don't exclude anybody and give everybody the chance to voice their opinion if they want to. I mean, if they have no concerns, we don't need to have the hearing, but if someone has a concern, they want to have a hearing, we'll schedule it and we'll have it, and then we'll make a decision.
Very good, thank you.
So the rest of this particular section under appeals was just moved to the BZA section. So the changes on the BZA section are actually minimal. So that this is just changed to update because it's now it's the land use article, not 66B, and then a correction was made in a reference to the chapter. This again, this was moved from another section, so that's existing requirement. And that's it for the administration and enforcement changes. So, and the corresponding changes related to the reference to administrative adjustments and variances would also be made in Chapter 155. Then under specific uses, if you recall when we were back in that section of the zoning code, we have the temporary and seasonal uses. The requirements for temporary and seasonal uses were split out from the actual list of temporary and seasonal uses. So the requirements we already covered previously in section 158.048. And here we've moved the uses to the specific uses section that now will be existing in the code. So a good bit of this is not new, it's just moved here. There's a few things that are different. Under A, schools and churches were added just as a clarification that it applies to things, like strawberry festivals or whatever they would be inviting the public into. Under B, the 90 days portion, I'd say from this section here is all new. And that is just to clarify that each one of these individual uses would be separate season and would be allowed for a period of 90 days. But you would need a separate zoning certificate for each one. But you could do Christmas trees for 90 days and you could do Christmas for 90 days. And then down here, the 30 days was added as a time frame for temporary shelter or for commercial display sales and services under temporary uses. And then the next thing that's new is under dumpsters. We have section 1 through 3 here are new. And we've had a lot of, I guess this has been an issue with dumpsters and self-contained storage, portable storage containers. So what we've added is the ability to use a dumpster or self-storage container in conjunction with a time period that coincides with a valid residential permit, construction permit. So it would be there during that time. You can also do a self-storage container for up to 3 months if it's like associated with a move. And then we've had people who've been wanting to use portable storage containers as a shed. And we're saying that's okay, fine, but it has to be completely within the rear yard. It's not really a temporary use, but because it falls under dumpsters and self-contained storage, that's why it's in this section. And then the last thing that's different here is J isn't really new. It was moved from another section, 158.047. But there was just some additional language that was added to it to clarify that, for disasters and that sort of thing, you can do temporary activities and structures that are associated within this limit. That is it. That is all that we had left to cover with you that we hadn't already covered. Are there any other questions on this section? If not, then I think we're done.
Yep.
Until next meeting, right, Linda?
And at the next meeting, we can do a summary wrap up of everything we covered, so that way you have an idea of what the changes are in their entirety, just as a quick summary. I'll make sure that we prepare something for you.
And I believe that Mary had a couple issues that she wanted to circle back on too.
Ask one clarifying question about this section before we do, and I know we're all bumping up on time. As it pertains to RV vehicles that somebody may be using on a semi-permanent basis, I've seen this happen a couple of times in our community where an RV is brought in and maybe a rebounding child may live in there for a period of time. How do we deal with that in this code? We talked about tiny houses. We've talked about a number of different things. I mean, I don't see that being a problem. Have y'all seen it be a problem, or is this something that is addressed here? Is it addressed elsewhere? Where do I look to for a solution to those kind of situations?
We do have that in the code under specific uses. One thing it does say about parking mobile homes, and we consider a recreational vehicle in the same category. We do have problems with that quite often, actually. It's not allowed in the county. You can use an RV or a recreational vehicle for up to 30 days if somebody's visiting. If your friends are visiting from Colorado, they can park their RV at your house and they can live in it for up to 30 days. Otherwise, if it's going to be any longer than that, they have to be in a bona fide campground to use it. You can store them on your property as long as they're licensed, but in no way, someone can't be temporarily living in them or anything like that. They're not to be used for living purposes. So if your son comes home from college and wants to move into the camper, that's not allowed. If we get a complaint, we'll go out and tell them they have to move out.
This is Jeff. I have just a question. I brought this up before, which are these self-contained portable storage containers used as a shed, which are considered a permanent structure, and they have to be located wholly within the rear yard. I don't know if we've had issues with that. I can just imagine I live in a neighborhood and my neighbor drops in a Maersk sea container in his backyard and says, yep, I'm good. And it's wholly within my backyard and it's going to be here forever. As a neighbor, I can see having a problem with that. Maybe and they're not all like that. I mean, I'm using kind of an extreme example to make a point, but under the code, that's, as I read it, it seems like that's perfectly fine, and the neighbors just have to live with it. Is that right, or am I reading that wrong?
And with the new proposed code, as it's stated there in that section, yes, that could be allowed. We do currently have issues with people buying self-contained devices because they're actually, you can buy one for less than $1,000 and using them as sheds. And that's a lot cheaper than going to Lowe's or Home Depot and buying one of their sheds. So we have a real problem with people doing that. This is a way to address it. I mean, it's more and more. I mean, people are, like I say, it's just so easy to get them and buy them and purchase them, and they hold up so much better than a wood or a plastic shed. And people are falling in love with them. And it is an issue currently. And right now, if you use it as a shed, we tell you got to get rid of it. But you can use it for a temporary period to store stuff in. But that's it currently.
But under this code, they can use it permanently.
Yeah, and with the new code here, they could use one as a shed in their backyard. One thing perhaps I would like to see, and I was going to bring this up at our next discussion, I'd like to see the size of the self-contained portable device limited, because you can get them from anywhere from 20 feet long to 53 feet long. So personally, I think they should be limited to a 20-foot maximum length, which is basically the size of a shed that you can buy at Lowe's.
Yeah, no, I think it's a longer discussion because a lot of things make good sheds, and I certainly get the practicality of it. But there are retired tractor trailer trailers, and they make great sheds too. But in certain circumstances, they're probably hideous. Maybe what we could do is talk about if there are specific landscaping requirements or something that could be. I don't want to make it too onerous. I mean, I get that practically they can be really useful, and they're not overly expensive. So I'm not discounting that. But again, we're always balancing property rights, and it's sort of like if my neighbor wants to have a nuclear waste facility, that might be a problem. That's, again, extreme example, but somebody dumping one of these sheds on their backyard, in their backyard, and it's 53 feet long, and it just came over on a vessel. It just seems to me there ought to be some way for the neighbors to have a voice in that, or there are just limitations on, or special requirements on landscaping or whatever. Not for today, but I just wanted to raise that because.
Well, like I say, they're easily accessible to buy nowadays because most shippers, once they get shipped to their destination, they don't care about them. They stack them and store them somewhere. It's more cost effective for them to abandon it than to ship it back to them and use it again. So that's why a lot of them are for sale, and you can get them fairly cheap.
Understood. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
It does look like we have a caller on the line. I guess I'll take caller. I'm not sure if you want to make a public comment at this time about the residential text. If so, just state your name.
Yeah, this is Wayne Schuster from Eldsburg, member of the FDCA. I don't have any comments at all today. I just want to identify myself on the call.
Okay, thank you, Wayne.
Sure, you bet. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, if you'll permit, I'll make a motion that we adjourn. This is Jeff.
Thank you. And with that, our next meeting is in a week and a half, 2 weeks, Wednesday night, June 2nd. And I'll see you all there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.